Welcome to the December 1st Facilities Advisory Committee meeting. I'm the Chair, Brian Gebhardt, calling the meeting to order at 7:32. We will start with roll call. And I will do my best to walk through that. So Cecily Lee.
Yes, I'm here.
And if I mispronounce someone's name, please correct me. I do apologize in advance, but please. Kenyana Pinzone, our student member. Okay. Not present. Henry Fong. Not present. Tom Ekman.
Present.
Mary Vigil. Present. Michelle Hartman-Gruber.
Yes.
Sharon Coco.
Yes, I'm here.
William Rojek.
Present.
Louisa Sangates. Not present. Robert Ho. He messaged me he would not be able to make it tonight. He's not present. Jennifer Parker.
Here.
And welcome. And Jennifer Ochi, please.
Yeah, Jennifer Aochi. Nice to meet everyone.
Welcome. Welcome both of you as new members to your first meeting as well. We really. And then Suchita Malik, I believe, is not present. So, where I wish we had a parliamentarian. So I'm trying to remember what quorum is. I think Henry Fung just joined us.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't turn my mic button turned on. I'm here.
Welcome. All right. So, good. So yes, we definitely do have quorum, which is 8. We have 9 members here tonight. So thank you, everybody. I'd like to turn to our first item, which is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda or any discussion of the proposed agenda?
I'll move to adopt the agenda. Cecily.
Thank you, Cecily. Second?
I'll second. This is Sharon.
This is Michelle.
You can have it, Michelle.
Doesn't matter, Sharon. We just need to move forward.
Great. And all in favor, either say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? All right. So by unanimous approval. Takes us to item 2, which is introductions. Thinking timing wise, as we have new members, maybe at the pleasure of the community, it might be worth taking a few extra minutes for everybody to say, to share their name, what they represent, and the category they represent, just as we have a couple new members tonight. And so the trick with this is to figure out how to go in order on these virtual meetings for that. So we'll go in alphabetical order based off first name, which is conveniently how the list is, and puts me first. I'm Brian Gebhardt. I'm a parent at the Washington attendance area, and I'm the chair of the FAC. So Cecily, if you could continue, we'll just walk through everybody on the list.
Yeah, I'm Cecily Lee. I'm serving as a secretary on this committee right now, and I represent the American high school attendance area. My kids go to Oliveira.
And Laura, why don't you introduce yourself since you're next on at least on my list this fact meeting, unless you're still in the other meeting.
I'm in both. I'm Laura Forrest. I'm the Public Information Officer for Fremont Unified School District. I'm here as a representative of FUSD, but I also take the meeting minutes.
Henry.
Hi, my name is Henry Fong. I'm a teacher at Irvington High School, and I'm representing the teacher union.
Jennifer A. I have two Jennifers.
So Jennifer Aochi,
Aochi. Yes.
and I'm representing the Irvington area.
Jennifer Parker.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jennifer Parker. I am a parent in the Kennedy attendance area.
Kelly.
I'm sorry, what was the question? Because I'm still at CVOC, but
Sorry,
I'm also
just-
here now too.
We were doing a full round of introductions as we have new members.
Okay, I'm Kelly Lynch McMahon, the Director of Facilities and Construction for Fremont Unified.
Thank you. And Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Hartman Grouper. I'm representing SEIU. I am out of Irvington High School, where I am a supply clerk there, but handling all the SEIU stuff right now.
Thank you. Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Coco, and I am a community member in the American attendance area.
And Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Ekman, Supervisor of Operations and Grounds, and I'm representing FSMA.
And William.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Rojek, and I'm a parent representing the Washington attendance area.
Thank you. And again, welcome to our new members again. And don't hesitate to reach out to me or Laura or Kelly on staff if you have any questions. The next item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes. We have two sets of minutes up for approval, the September 27th meeting and the November 3rd meeting. They are attached as attachments in the agenda document, so hopefully everybody had a chance to look at those. And if there are any questions, please raise your hand. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the September 27 and November 2nd meetings.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Now, we're on Google for the first time. I think we were using Zoom before, so I'm trying to, and I did a voice vote on the adopting the agenda because that's usually not very controversial. These minutes probably aren't either, but how about we'll use the raise hand feature for voting from here on forward. So if you would please raise your hand if you approve the motion to approve both sets of minutes. Oh, now everybody's listed twice here, so I have to think about it. So we have 7 ayes. Everyone, please lower your hand. Is there anyone opposed to approving the minutes? Please raise your hand now. Is anybody abstain from approving the minutes? All right, the motion carries with 7 ayes. It takes us to our next item, item 4, oral and written communications. I do not see any members from the public on the call, which this would be the time at which they who could speak on anything not on our agenda. Kelly or Laura, are you aware if there's been any written communications to the committee?
I have not received any written information, and Laura, I don't know. She'd have to report if she's seen anything, but I haven't received anything.
No, I don't receive communication for this committee.
Okay. Great. I think we have no oral and written communications this evening. All right. Well, it takes us to our first regular kind of agenda item, which is to review the 2021 draft demographics report. Did Laura or Kelly, did you have a presentation in mind for this?
Brian, I do not have a presentation in mind for that. I was not able to get the company to be able to come and present this information to you all. So what I had recommended is that if you have any questions, submit them to me in writing so that I would be able then to provide that information and they could respond, and you would have a clear, concise answer for any questions that you all may have.
Okay. Actually, this is a good time for me to provide
where they presented the draft.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there for a moment, Kelly, but I guess this is actually a good time to talk about the overarching theme of this meeting. The demographics report is one of the more important reports for the district, because not just facilities, not just important for facilities, because we need to have a space for all of our students and for our facilities planning to know our student population and what the trends we expect to see over the coming years. But it's also important for staff planning. How many teachers do we think we'll need, and those sorts of things. So it's one of the most critical things that the district watches. And so as we're expecting to get consulted on more and more facilities needs and more critical facilities needs over the coming months, working with Kelly and Laura, wanted to provide some foundational information to the committee so that everybody kind of understands the demographics report and understands the previous committee report, which will be great review for some of us, and for people who weren't here, help bring you up to speed. And so that's the intent behind items 5 and 6 this evening. It's a lot of information, right? If you look at the board item, there's a PowerPoint, and then there's a report that is, I think, 80 pages long. And so it is a lot of information. But I think it is crucial to as we will be discussing other things. So so I'm going to suggest that I will bring up the presentation that was shared with the board. I guess first, by show of hands, how many people had the opportunity to look at the board presentation or watch the board meeting recording? Don't be bashful if you haven't. But by show of hands, how many people? All right, so roughly about half of us. Just to level set with the group here, that's helpful. So I do think there is time for us to briefly look at the presentation and with staff support, address any questions that come out of that. And so I'm going to suggest we do that at this point. I will share my screen. Oh yes, Sharon, you're on mute, I think. Sharon, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Sorry, I forget about that. This report and presentation that went to the board at their November meeting there were many parts of it that were not accurate.
So Sharon, you could say it was the draft and is now being modified and updated.
Right. Okay, that's true. It was a draft and it's being modified now. So it's going to raise some questions because it's not the final report, which the board will receive, I believe, on December 8th, or is that correct? Yeah. So that report's going to look a bit different in terms of the projections of the enrollment going forward. I don't know by how much, but people have questions about it. Nobody may have the answer to it at this moment. But anyway.
That's an excellent call out. And I think it builds on what Kelly said earlier, is that we may collect a bunch of questions. And there's a lot of value to us collecting our questions. Because that'll help the board as well. I don't know if Kelly, Lee, or Sharon, you want to elaborate on that, because I was at the meeting and it wasn't clear to me what level of modification we were talking about.
It's the draft report, because I actually get it at the same time that the associate soups get it. And Sharon and I met, and also I met with Christy Rocha and some other folks in instruction. And the numbers that were presented did not account for the consolidation of the sixth graders and the vacancies that would occur at the elementary schools. And so when you modify those numbers to match what the numbers will be after the conversions occur from the elementaries to the middle schools for sixth grade, you get a difference of about 1,400 students. And so that makes a huge difference in how you track moving forward, because that also will impact the numbers that they have at the prospective middle schools that were tallied in the report, and also will have an impact at the high school level, because those middle schoolers, fast forward 4 or 5 years, they'll be tracking in the high school. And so when we did our rough calculations, we found that there were a lot of errors and misinformations that were being presented to give you the idea that, yeah, we're in declining enrollment and this enrollment is going to sort of spiral, but it actually levels out, and we actually will start seeing an increase the fall of 24-25 school year, and 25-26 we'll have estimated 300-400 new students from what we call the COVID boom. So those kinds of things weren't really taken into consideration, and so we've met with them, we've gone back and forth with a bunch of information, but we will be looking for him to have updated that and modified it, and you'll see a change. Not a significant, but you will see a change. But those small changes have downstream impacts that will be seen in the report. So
that's thank you for sharing that, because that definitely wasn't clear at the board meeting that I viewed.
Well, and of course, we're not going to necessarily come out and say the consultant we've hired, hey, dude, you're wrong. We're going to gently say, look, you need to modify this and make these corrections. And, let's check it before we start releasing this information to the public. So.
I think it's extra valuable for us to walk through the presentation for you to point out where there's going to be changes. Because we will have to discuss this again in January, no doubt. Because this is, I mean, our demographic report is one of the most central planning tools we have. So I will share my screen. I probably won't I'm guessing I won't be able to see people after I do that, but we shall see. If this works. Oh, maybe it is working. Are you is everybody seeing my window?
Yes.
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 And so I will move to the first slide and check that everybody's seeing things. And I'll definitely need Kelly's help on this. But this is one of the first bits of information is kind of the 10-year enrollment history and the 6-year enrollment projection. And I think just, I guess, Kelly, I need you to talk to whether or not you're expecting this chart to change in the update, just so everybody is aware. Kelly may be at the other meeting. We have back-to-back meetings with the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee happening before the Facilities Advisory Committee. So that is making things more complicated. It's a huge benefit to staff so they have one night instead of multiple nights, but it does sometimes make logistics a little challenging. So I'm just going to move forward, and we'd be very open-minded about things are going to change, and we will be clear about that when we talk about it at our next meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So where does, I'm assuming the previous year shows actuals, but that's an assumption. I don't see it actually indicate that, or if this is all just forecast. And then my second question is, where does the forecast information going forward, where does that come from?
So this line, I don't know if you see my mouse cursor or not. Probably not.
I can.
Oh, good. So that line there, 2021 is the current year and going backwards, and that should all be actuals.
Okay.
And then 22, 23 is projections moving forward.
And what data goes into the projections?
The primary data, which you'll see more, we'll go into the next slide, is expected kindergarten enrollment rates, which is primarily based on birth rates. And then we also development is looked at as well, right? If there is new housing coming online and how many students come from that. Or
I think if you move forward through the slides, I think they do a pretty good job of explaining like the birth rate trends for kinder and the different factors that the demographer uses in order to make these projections.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
And so, yeah, much easier for you to see it, right? And so I think the way to read this is make sure I get this right, because here it is. It says here. This is the school year. So this is the 2021 school year. Is this blue column right here, and this is the number of kindergarten students that appeared this year, 2190. The dot above this is the number of births that occurred 5 years earlier in Fremont. That's 2862. And that's one of the biggest factors used for projections. is the change in birth rate year over year. And so you can see, and we'll talk about capture rate in a minute, because an obvious question is like, why don't these bars match, right? And I believe a slide later has that. So we'll hold that thought, but hold that question. But you can see that the birth rates have declined in recent years. And so the projections moving forward assume a decline. And the capture rate, which we'll see in a moment, is also declining. So the yellow is the projections based on birth rates. Then you see these red boxes. That is the additional students projected by new development. And I think one of the observations is that, the birth rate is the biggest determining factor of school populations.
So Brian, not to interrupt you, part of the challenge that we had with this information that was presented is that, with COVID and the shelter in place, we have students in the virtual academies as well as students who are attending virtually outside the area. And it's a pretty significant number. It's about 22% of our students who kind of are learning within this framework. And we are hesitant to say yay or nay on these numbers because we're tracking students who are currently still in Fremont. We're tracking students who are learning from remote learning situations. And then every week our virtual academy numbers change, which means students are actually either returning to the classroom or they're actually being, taken to a charter school, moving out of the area. So we're not really even able to track accurately until the school year ends what our real numbers are. And that's why we're a little hesitant with these numbers the way that they are, because they didn't capture any of that data, because it's so dynamic on a daily basis.
So all projections are point in time, right? Right. So what would be good to understand is does this number include the number of enrolled virtual academy students at a point in time, or is that just not included at all on this chart?
Well, in the draft, it was not included, but since we've since had a discussion with the demographer and reviewed a lot of these variations and nuances, the new report that's going to be finalized and presented will address a lot of the things that I'm talking about.
And how many virtual academy students do we have now?
I don't know an exact number, but I know percentage wise, it constitutes about 21% of our student body. So, and like I said, every week it changes because, we get these reports to say, hey, we're down 5 students, or we're up 3, or we're down 12 and up 4. So it's very dynamic, very, very dynamic.
So 21% of 30,000 students, just for rough numbers, is about 6,300 students. And this is just rough order of magnitude to understand that. That is very interesting. That would be a tremendous swing.
That's why we were like, no, don't release this information yet, so.
Okay. Well, so at least the fundamentals of how this happens, hopefully people are learning that and we're getting questions out on the table. I think this is, okay, let's keep going.
Just one more.
Or if there's a question. Yes.
Sorry,
I give space for questions.
Just one more question. So, granted, the virtual academy and COVID is a huge factor with the last 2 school years. I'm assuming that there's school population changes still occur on a regular, whatever pre-COVID normal school year was like, what was that percentage of, or how often would you see changes with enrollment pre-COVID?
We track it on a monthly basis. You know, we do daily attendance, but then also everything is reconciled on a monthly basis. And we didn't see nearly as many fluctuations from in person as we see now with the virtual academies. And you know, with COVID, it's just so weird. You just never know what people's circumstances are, and so things are very fluid right now. The other thing that I wanted to also let you guys know that will impact these numbers, the district is considering full day kindergarten. And once that decision is made, that full day kindergarten changes these kindergarten numbers. Because once we do that, you are now going to have an influx and basically the floodgates will open is what we're expecting. You will have people enrolling in full day kindergarten at a much faster rate, and you won't see the decline like you see now with the half day kindergartners.
So, I mean, let's answer one question at a time because it's very easy to get overloaded with all this information. So I wanted to make sure I understood your question, Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand, again, I assume populations just for various reasons on a regular school year have changes as well. I just wanted to understand the impact given COVID and what those changes are. And it sounds like the impact, the difference between the variation pre-COVID and the variation we're seeing now is a huge factor, big enough where it has to be considered. And as far as for the planning purposes, I just wanted to check.
No, well said. But I will add, FAC did an analysis, pre-COVID report, and that's actually the next agenda item is to look at that. And so there's all this context in that report, as well as the demographic reports from the district. I don't know, Michelle had your hand raised, but I think you put it down. Just checking to make sure you didn't have a question.
Well, I have. I was having sat through many years of demographic reports. I was wondering what is this the same company that we've used in the past, or it is? So they should have been able to take information that they've had over a while and worked off of that, looking at trends as well. And I know sitting where I could track from going back to 2014, sitting where everything we were always going increase, that it takes the district 2-3 years, even with the demographics, to finally make that turn to come back down again. So having this information, it's really, we're finally reacting to what we should have reacted to a couple of years ago is what it looks like.
I think, I mean, it's worth noting that we've seen enrollment go up and we've seen enrollment go down in recent years. And so from what my takeaway from what Kelly said is that, that there's new factors with COVID that we don't, that we're just learning about now. And so I think, I think I'd be very careful. Drawing any conclusions too early. So, all right. So I might, I'm thinking in real time about how best to go through the rest of this, but the and Jennifer Aochi, could I ask you a favor? Would you mind muting, please? Thank you. And so this chart, I'm sure, will be updated, and this information will be updated as well. But my impression from the board meeting was that the expansion of TK will likely affect our demographic projections as well. And so, and I think this is talking about as TK eligibility expands, there'll be more TK enrollment. This is intent is to look at, how stable our enrollment is year over year. So, if you look at a particular grade compared to when they were kindergartens, how many students have we lost or not lost? My personal takeaway from this chart is that it's reasonably stable. Yes, you see areas in 5th and 6th, but it's reasonably stable, which I think it's, we tend to hold on to students fairly well. This is the 6-year projections, which will get updated. And this are some of the items to watch. TPA expansion mentioned, development activity, of course, the movement of 6th grade to the middle school and how that impacts facility use, the immersion programs, and then, of course, the virtual academy, independent studies. And then I think there were a few other items Kelly mentioned as well. So that's a very brief overview. One slide that wasn't here that I think is interesting is to look at the kindergarten capture rate, which I'm sure will be updated as well. And that's essentially how. Well, if there's questions about it, I'll pull up more information on that. But I think I'll pause now and take questions, and then we can. So, Michelle.
Yeah. And I apologize, I wasn't at the last meeting, so bear with me if I repeat myself. But I understand capture rate of if you go to a full-time kindergarten, of retaining more of those kindergartners. Have seen an increase in that just on basic economics with parents looking for places to have their students. The TK though, is the TK are if we look to expansion, are we looking to increase the TK to a full day program as well as the kindergarten, or just increase TK classes?
My understanding is more and more kids will be eligible to be a member of the TK program. So it's like moving the birth date requirement earlier and earlier until all 4-year-olds qualify for TK. I am not an expert, so if someone else has more context that they want to share on that, please. But I believe that is what's going on, is it's phasing in over a number of years to support all 4-year-olds getting a TK year.
Well, I understand the TK part of it, of the eligibility. My question is, are we looking at a full day of TK, or are we looking at a half day TK, or a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type thing? Because I've seen different programs out there. If we're looking to expand our kindergarten, if the school board's looking to expand kindergarten from a half-day program to a full-day program, which in fact doubles the amount of kindergarten classes that you now have,
right?
What would the same thing be said about the TK? Is that a half-day or a full day? I just wanted clarification on that.
I'm not sure, Michelle. I didn't hear anything about full day for TK. Just the fact that in the next, going forward from here, they're in increments taking 4-year-olds at certain 4 years and 3 months, 4 years and 6 months, all the way back to now I've turned 4, I'm eligible. And they back up the date. So I think it goes back to September when it's all said and done. August or September, all 4-year-olds will be eligible. So right now it's not happening, but it will increase the number of classrooms by the sheer numbers of those kids that will be eligible. But I don't believe their plan is to go full day with TK.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sharon. That's a good question. Other questions? And this is including questions we'd like Kelly to take back to the demographer and staff as well. All right. Hearing no additional questions, although the next item is also related to demographics, or to the previous work FAC has done on demographics as well as facilities planning. So it may encourage other questions may come up as a result of that. But as there are no further questions, we will move on to item 6. Review previous fact work on demographics and facilities priorities. And I prepared a presentation to walk the committee through. I guess first off, by show of hands, how many people were not able to look at or access the 2 reports? Just to kind of level set. I reversed it on you guys just to keep you on your toes. So no hands are raised. That means you all read the reports, every page of the. And I meant if you could use the raise hand feature in the Google Meet, that would help because I actually can't see everybody. Thank you, the brave, honest one. So everybody else read the reports? Well, good. I'm glad of that. I still will briefly recap them because I think that'll help. Let me get up my presentation here. All right. So these are just excerpts from the reports, and then definitely want Q&A discussion around all aspects of these reports, including feedback in terms of how useful this context is, because I do want to make sure I get feedback from the committee if this is helping, and where you might like to go deeper, or where you want me to go faster. So there are 2 reports that the FAC adopted and forwarded to staff and the board, and kind of the genesis of how this. Well, I'll talk more about the background, but both of these reports were spearheaded by a subcommittee of the FAC, which was 2 of the members of the subcommittee are no longer on the FAC, but Henry Fong and I were a member of that 4-person subcommittee. And the subcommittee developed the proposal that then the FAC debated and adopted. And the first one was a report on FUSD Financial Advisory Committee goals and success criteria. Like, how do we evaluate our facilities plans are meeting our goals? What are our goals? The second report was a report on the 2021 FUSD demographics. And this was not only an analysis of the Davis demographics report, which is the previous vendor. The current vendor is SchoolWorks for the report we just looked at, but the previous vendor, the Davis demographics, provided a demographic report on January 20th, 2021 to the board. But we also looked at other trends in the state and other local districts. So briefly on the first report, some of the background on that report is that this project was started by the request of the board. On March 27th, 2019, they asked the FAC to look at balancing attendance area elementary feeder schools to contribute to the board established goals for school sizes. So, and I put a slide in here recapping the board school size targets that to talk about in a moment. But kind of the idea is how do we balance these things out, and what are the factors to consider? And then we created the subcommittee in December of that year, which proposed a list of goals and a rubric to measure those plans against, and to help us with planning our long-term capacity needs. The executive summary really, the first observation FAC made was that there's a huge number of variables and information in evaluating facilities plans, which makes it super challenging. And as you saw from our previous conversation, there's just so many details. And so we proposed simplifying down to a few key goals with a few key measures to help us evaluate things. And we recommended a set of goals and a rubric for evaluating facilities plans. And then part of the intent was to have a system where we could compare different proposed facilities changes to see, do they help meet our goals more or less? No system is going to be perfect, but it was an attempt to move in that, to give us a system we could evaluate things on. I will add that we really, the board and the staff and FAC really have not taken action on these goals in this rubric because, the focus has been on managing through the pandemic and the facilities needs there and the district's needs there. But, as moving forward, we know it will be important. This is the planning rubric, the report laid out, and kind of inspired by a teacher's rubric, where we have a weighting and a set of goals, and we selected 6 goals. Now, again, these aren't necessarily the only goals. It doesn't mean like these are the only things we're going to use to measure, but we thought these were the most important things to be looking at in every facilities change. And so the first goal was to maximize the impact of the funds spent on facilities. And measurement is like, how well are we utilizing our facilities? Do we have a lot of empty classrooms, or are they very full? And then also any facilities change that we're evaluating, how much additional funding does it require is an aspect of what we thought should be measured. And that a plan that requires less funding, could likely be a better plan than one that requires a lot more funding. The second priority was to reduce the number of overloaded students. And the measure there is simple. How many students are not overloaded? The third was to hit the board adopted target school sizes. And so how close are we to those target school sizes? Fourth was the socioeconomic composition. And so trying to have an eye towards, is there equity in the plan? And the proxy measure we chose, again, there's no measure is going to be perfect, but the proxy measure we chose was free and reduced meals. And so if a facilities change, clustered a lot more students on free and reduced lunch in one particular boundary than in another boundary, creating a bigger discrepancy across our schools, we thought that was bad, and that our goal should be to have that metric be as close to as possible to the district average. And so again, a facilities plan that got us closer to the district average or didn't make things worse might be better than one that made the discrepancies even bigger between schools in wealthy area, or schools in wealthy areas versus less wealthy areas, just in one way of describing that. Priority 5 was to reduce the number of temporary portables. These are portables that we that essentially we rent, and they're actually they serve a good purpose. We do need flux capacity and we do need the ability to have an extra classroom here and there across the district, because students don't come in packages of 30 or 28 or 24 or whatever our class size ratio is very cleanly, but it's also an expense. So can we reduce that? And the priority 6 was targeting locations for specialty programs that we wanted to put a priority in planning on a central site for elementary school and middle school immersion programs. And then the other measure you see there is, and does that plan have room for projected growth of those programs? So I went through this very quickly. I want to pause and take any questions. I suppose questions or comments are both fine. Jennifer.
Was there any consideration or conversation or discussion around distance for families who are, whether it's being overloaded or I guess it's more of an overload to other schools? So for example, I know that from what I've seen on the district website, the new school over by the new BART station, that seems to be in line with going to Kennedy and passing Irvington on the way. So was that something that was considered when identifying goals regarding facilities planning?
I did not actually reread the full report before this meeting, so I'm basing this off my memory. And I welcome other committee members to add to this, but I think I'm trying to remember. I mean, I do believe it was discussed, and again, it gets to the point that like these are the top goals; they aren't necessarily the only goals.
Mm-hmm. And just one follow-up question. Then I'm completely new to Fremont Unified School District. I have a first grader, and so this is a facilities. This is like a subcommittee, right? That were formed to support the facilities planning. How does this align with Fremont Unified's goals?
How do
these goals?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I mean, really, I guess that's a question we should put to the board. Because we submitted this to the board and then COVID happened. But we have never had a conversation with the board about this, actually.
Brian, I think that's a good question, and maybe this is something we want to submit to them again as kind of, hey, just a reminder, we'd like for you to, weigh in on this, and this is something that we need to address, because we are starting to do our planning again, and this is very important information that, they need to verify for us and provide some direction before we get too far down the road and they say, oh, this doesn't match up with anything that we want to do, versus, hey, this is right on target, or modify these things X, Y, or Z. So
thank you, Kelly. I agree. And may I suggest maybe there's a conversation with the superintendent and the associate superintendent first.
Absolutely.
As chair, I'd be happy to do that. And if we wanted any other representation in that conversation, happy to have someone else from FAC there too. But just like to help craft the way we get the question in front of the board. So I will reach
I
out
think that's
to
a great idea, and
superintendent.
I'd be happy to, put a word out to the superintendent and have him get back to us on schedule and timing.
Thank you. And keep the questions coming, Jennifer. The fresh eyes are super helpful. These are good questions. And did we answer your question, actually, just to make sure, circle back? Was there any part we missed?
Nope. It sounds like both my questions were, one was answered, one it sounds like an action taken. And just one other follow-up. Where would I find the Fremont Unified School District, just kind of top goals, objectives, mission for the students?
It's a good one.
I know if Laura's still on the line, maybe she could pull that and email that to the FAC, because I know it exists.
I can send you the information that we have posted. I depending on exactly what your like academic goals or depends on exactly what you want. So I can post just that information, the link to like the vision and mission here, and then you can let me know what specific questions you have, and I'll track down as much information as I can.
So just one thought specifically to the facilities, right? I'm hearing as a parent, a lot of these schools are overloaded. There's not enough funding, but then at the same time, in the conversation I've heard, in the discussion so far, I'm hearing, well, we want to have more children enroll in TK, which means we'd have more children in the system. Have extend kinder classes, again, having more children in the system. So if I'm trying to figure out what the goal of Fremont Unified is with some of these initiatives that they're working on, because it sounds like we're trying to the district is trying to increase the population. I understand the rationale for that, but with doing that, how does that affect? That directly affects the facilities planning part of it. And so what are we trying to accomplish, right? Otherwise, we're going to be continuing to chase our tail, trying to keep up with, trying to increase the availability of facilities.
Oh,
so anything
hello.
related to the facilities? Sorry, I also have my little one here.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. So I think, that's even a good topic for FAC. I don't know, Sharon, you raised your hand. Did you want to respond or a separate question?
I just wanted to add that when it comes to the TK and the all-day kindergarten, those are mandates that are coming from the state. FUSD knows that our facilities are being used, and the fact that if we do go to full day kindergarten and we don't know when the mandate's going to come that you have to do it by, we just know it's in the pipeline to happen. And we know that that's going to impact classrooms at our elementary schools. There's no way it can't. But we're not going to have a choice about whether or not we want to do it or don't want to do it. So
I see.
It is going to happen. Don't know when it's going to happen for sure, but it is topic of conversation at the state.
And hopefully some funding to come along with that increased planned capacity.
The funding that will come is if we do end up capturing more of those kinder students. When you look at the birth rate and then you look at the capture rate, and there's a discrepancy, a lot of our kids, and I'm not sure who mentioned it, it might have been you, that, I think it was Michelle, talked about full day kindergarten is a good thing for kids, number one, and for families as well, because we have a lot of families who don't come to FUSD because there's not the childcare for all day. They work, both parents work. So they go to private school where they get that all day care for their children, so they don't come to us. So it will capture a lot of those students once that comes into play. But like I said, I'm not sure when that's going to be.
Thank you. So I need to move more quickly because I'm getting behind on the time. So I'm going to start moving more quickly. A very good conversation. This is the board adopted school size targets. I don't have off the top of my head when they were adopted. When last they were, I think it's in the report. But the idea is to have a target range between a minimum and a maximum. So elementary, you see it's 450 to 900. And in general, I think these are influenced by, what is a good size school for the type of programs we want to run for our, right? If, for example, if a high school is too small, it won't have enough kids for a diverse program of electives. But if it's too big, I think Fremont generally has not wanted to do things like Union City chose, which was to have Logan High School with 4,000-ish students, right? So there's a lot of choices that go into establishing these school sizes, but these have been reasonably stable targets for many years. You'll see the red line and the blue number. This is the facts recommendation of the board that again was not acted on, but essentially we just said you need to adjust the middle school target because the 1,500 number was based on 2 grade levels, 7 and 8, and so we just need to adjust it to 1,800 because we are moving to a world where we have 6, 7, and 8s was our recommendation. And so that's that report. So the second report was looking at the demographics. And what I did is I took the executive summary from that report, and then I pulled out information from the SchoolWorks demographics report we just looked at, which is information I pulled out. The information in blue I pulled straight from their report. So just explaining the format of this slide, because I was trying to provide the update. Given what we now know about the changes coming on that report, we'll have to redo the blue text. But if you focus on the black text, these are all information that came out of the last demographics report, the Davis demographics report in January of 2021. The district was projected to decline 7.7% students over the next 7 years in that report. 75% of the enrollment decline was at the elementary level. The primary driver for declining enrollment was a drop in birth rates. The second driver was a drop in kindergarten capture rate, which is why I think that's an important concept. Maybe we allocate time to cover next time as well. And then our school utilization rate was projected to drop sharply as well. Again, mostly at the elementary level where our drop is. And then the other remark is that, we are in the middle of building middle schools, and we're still in the process of adding, my numbers, adding, I think, almost 1,000 seats to the 3 middle schools that are in progress. So we're actually increasing our capacity district-wide. And when all those 6th graders are pulled out of that elementary level into the middle school level for the 3 remaining schools, that will make our elementary school sizes even smaller. And then the part 2 was the first bullet talks about how many students are we expected to see from new homes. And in that demographic report, there was 4,800 new homes that would generate 974 students. 974 out of, over 30,000 students. It's a relatively small number. And then the report looked at statewide what's happening and at other districts around us. And then statewide enrollment is declining. In a February 2020 study that was projected to decrease 7%. Where's that 7% number again, right? We're at least based on last year's demographic report, right in line with the decreases expected over the next 7 to 10, or perhaps 7 years or 10 years, but a decline of 7. And that, and then the other thing, this report, which is referenced if you want to go read the full report, this February 2020 Public Policy Institute report, they noted that when declines happen, they tend to be large and long-lasting. They're not usually temporary things. And then if we pulled demographic reports from Newark and Union City, and had seen similar declines in their enrollment and their recent demographic reports. And so that's the executive summary of what the kind of the data was telling us. And then the section of this report said, okay, well, what should we discuss? You know, what should we do about it? And the facts said in that report that we should return to the FAC adopted facilities priorities. Those are the priorities I just talked to. And work towards the plans that'll better meet those priorities. That for increasing enrollment, we should consider options that might draw more students. That we have too many small elementary schools, and we need to look at the impacts of those small elementary school sizes. And that we need to look closely at our school utilization and look at how we want to better balance utilization of our facilities. And last, consider program changes, like the impact of going to all-day kindergarten, or the impact we talked about of getting more TK students. And these program changes are program changes that may be mandated by the state, or they may be program changes that we think are just the right thing to do for our kids too, right? We can be inspirational and aspirational in our goals as well. And so that is a very brief overview of those two reports. And then now I will pause for discussion and next steps, or move to that. Any questions, please raise your hand, or discussions. Yes, Michelle.
I think one of the things that you showed up there that we have to look ahead to is maximizing the facilities that we have. And having been around with the great debate of moving Wide Bell from the Mission San Jose feeder area to the Irvington feeder area, and people going, oh, well, we need to do this and not in my backyard. We're probably coming back around to rebalance rooms and the amount of facilities necessary to house the people that we have out here right now in the different areas. So it could be that we may get called into utilizing all this information to assist in district changes, district boundary changes too. So, and I think that kind of might be something that Jennifer that you were kind of alluding to, is that you have overloads. When do we take a look at how do we balance this stuff out? Well, if everyone's all moving into North Fremont to balance things out, we don't have any more room there. They have to send it until they do a full balance of the entire district. And I think when we ask our questions of the board or of the superintendents, are they going to be looking at us for help in that or support in that? Because I think that's a real possibility of it coming up in the next year or two, especially being that we're coming out of a census year.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I agree. That's a very important conversation we need to help with. Anyone else? Well, I know this was a lot of information, but I think this is very good level setting for the work we're going to be doing in the coming months. And I want to thank everybody for leaning in with questions and comments and discussion. This is the important work. With that, I will move to item 7, which is staff update. So, Kelly, you have some updates you want to share.
Sure. So there are under construction within the district that we are actively managing. That, of course, would be the 3 middle schools of Thornton, Centerville, and Hopkins. And as you guys know, Hopkins is located at Lila Bringhurst at the current moment and will actually stay there through June of 2022. And part of the reason why they are actually staying there is that we have been impacted by the supply chain issues that you all have been hearing about in the news. And we also have been impacted by labor shortage, as well as unforeseen conditions at Hopkins site that we, of course, had not expected, that impacted many things. But just so that you all know, that is one of the reasons why we chose to keep the students at Lila Bringhurst, because we have a backlog of about 6 or 8 weeks on our roofing projects, as well as our roof jacks that support the HVAC units that would go on the buildings that the students would actually occupy. So as a measure of caution and safety, we just said, you know what, they're fine at Lila Bringhurst. Yes, it's an inconvenience for parents to drive them every day and to bus them back and forth, but it's a much safer environment on many levels for them to stay put and to finish out their school year in a healthy, stable, safe, and secure environment at Lila Bringhurst. They will be returning to Hopkins in August, and there will still be 2 buildings that will be under construction. The new building, the new classroom 2-story structure, as well as the new, we call it K1, and that is going to be, there's going to be a new kitchen and a new facility for food preparation. We're going to be modifying and updating the music room, and they're going to get additional classrooms, as well as a new like band room and choir room, things like that. So they'll have all of the classrooms will be modernized, and the paths of travel, as well as the turnaround area, will be completed. And you'll be able to see a lot of progress from where you are now to what will be available for them next semester. Also, Thornton is moving along really well. We have the 4 2-story classroom structures that are up, and the building envelope is closed in. And when I talk about the building envelope, the exterior and the windows and all the pretty painting and the roofing and all that stuff is in. And so right now they're doing all the finish work on the inside of those classrooms. And so we've got a lot of the elevators installed, and the machinery and switch gear that goes to that is being installed right now. And a lot of the cabinetry, the science labs and countertops and things are going in. So those are coming along really, really nicely. And those will be ready for transition of the existing classrooms that the students are in, buildings on the 1-story structures. Those students will be transitioned into the newer buildings, and then the existing buildings will then be modernized beginning in March. So there's moving of the shells, of moving them from one place to the other, and then working on the new administrative space, the new library. We're going to do some modifications in the cafeteria. There's going to be a new locker room. Those kinds of support services areas also be worked on. So that's going to happen in the spring for Thornton. Then Centerville. Centerville has structural steel that was erected about 2 weeks ago. And you guys over the next maybe month and a half will see that building envelope kind of just becoming closed, because we're trying to beat the rainy season and get as much of that outside work done so that the workers can then begin to work inside. They have the weight room is going to be rebuilt and replaced, and we've got lots of utility work that's still going to be going on, because there's a second structure that's going to be erected over the summer. So those students at all 3 of those schools will transition fully into the new facilities in the fall semester of the 2023 school year. Rick's is the early education center. We are on target. The goal is to have staff and students occupy in January. That date is in flux right now based on some supply issues that we're dealing with, but the goal is to have everybody return to that site and open it in January of 2022. And then, of course, we have our regular run-of-the-mill maintenance and operations stuff that we're always putting out fires every day somewhere. So, but fortunately, we're moving along, and we're just making sure that everything stays, current and compliant, so that we can keep the doors open. We're doing a lot of prep work for the winter break, and we, of course, don't have the same schedule that the rest of the district has, in that we actually do some work over the break. So that schedule is being developed and will be discussed, and we'll see what we can complete over the break time during our winter break. But I think that's about it. I don't have anything that's been significantly changed, but that's the latest and the greatest progress on the jobs. And the other thing that's a really important thing that I always like to report out, and I do this on our weekly meetings with all of our teams, we are very, 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 very fortunate that Fremont has not had any instances of safety violations or accidents for the last 33 months. So we are really, really doing an awesome job to not have any workers. With all that goes on, we have no reports of accidents. So we should pat ourselves on the back, and the teams that we have that work for us, to be very, very focused and safe out there. So I always like to give them kudos for that. And that's my report.
Thank you, Kelly. Jennifer, just saw you raise your hand. You have a question? Comment?
Yes, I just had a quick question. How does the district or who decides what the middle school, the one, what they get on at their site? Like if one middle school gets their kitchen redone and other middle school gets, classrooms, how is that decided?
So it's my understanding, and I can only speak from this perspective that I have, because I inherited all of this. So all of the scope in terms of what was going to be done for the middle schools was decided prior to my arrival. But the goal, the intention of the modernization is that all the schools would have sort of a baseline of services that everybody would have that would be equal. So everybody should, have a kitchen, a library, music, science, instructional spaces. I believe that there's counseling spaces at each one of the schools. The principal, vice principal, whatever their makeup is, they try and accommodate whatever those scopes of work would be. But I think a lot of the decisions are made based on, I guess, the types of programs that the schools offer. And I know that each one of the middle schools, they each have a different sort of personality and a different sort of program that's unique to them that maybe another middle school may not have. So like I know, is it Hopkins and Thornton have very robust music and visual arts programs. And then Centerville, they have a maker space that other schools don't have. And so like Washington High School has a really different maker space than say something that goes on at Kennedy, and Kennedy has like the automotive that they partner with the ROP. So it's like those specialty kinds of things are all sort of different based on the school's personality. But I know that there is always a baseline of requirements that every school has that we do meet at every site. And so some of the parents are a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Proactive and festive in terms of advocating for their students. And sometimes the PTA is a little more robust. So maybe they might have more creature comforts than another school because the parents have decided that, hey, this is what we want our students to have based on, what we provide them. But I could go on, but if there's a specific thing that you're interested in, I'd be happy to, if you email me, research and find out for you and advise you how to, if your school doesn't have something that you want, how to go about getting it. But the first step is always your principal. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, That did. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Again, thank you, Kelly, for the update. That moves us on to item 8, subcommittee reports. We have a couple subcommittees. I guess this is a standing item. Sometimes there's a report, sometimes there aren't, but there's always an opportunity for subcommittees to report. And Sharon is our representative on the SDI, or the Spanish Dual Immersion Mandarin Immersion Program Immersion Task Force. And so,
Right. And Judy Nye also serves on that committee. I don't know if she's present. I didn't hear you call her name.
so Judy is no longer a member of FAC.
Oh,
I believe
okay.
Tom Ekman is the new FSMA rep, if I recall.
Okay.
I think Judy was FSMA.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't put that together. Sorry.
So yeah, so it's just you. And if
It's just me. Okay.
if you think we need more representation, let us know.
Oh,
I
no,
think we're pretty good.
I think you confuse it because she's an SDI principal and she serves on the committee we're on here and also has a voice on the SDI MIP task force. So anyway, they met in November. They're changing the date of their next meeting in December in order to have more definitive information on the demographic report. They're looking at trying to come up with a recommendation for the board in January, hopefully, to choose a site. There's 3 choices, and they're really not going to be a surprise to many people. Grimmer Elementary for SDI, Blako Elementary for SDI, and possibly Lila Bringhurst. But as I say Lila Bringhurst has not come on board as a viable option for either the MIP program or the SDI program. The fiscal impact of opening that site is not something the board has made a decision on. And although you might think, well, it's already open because there's students from Hopkins at Lila Bringhurst, but what you have to understand is that staff is not an additional staff. It's the current staff at Hopkins that is just working from that location. So yes, the lights and the water and the energy is the expense, but they're not paying an additional principal, an additional custodian, clerical staff, more teachers in order to open that site. So it is one of the, what's the word I want? Choices that they would like considered. Lila Bringhurst could only house one of those programs, not both. So the options that they have to choose from is Lila Bringhurst, knowing that that may not be an option, Blako, and Grimmer Elementary. MIP has their strand at Azevedo, and they have their other strand that started this year at Blako Elementary, which is supposed to, it can take the growth at that school at Blako. We've developed a parent survey that's currently being translated, and it will go out to all of the families who have students in both of those programs. And when we get those surveys back, that will help inform the task force's recommendation, because if in the SDI parents, if 70% of them say, no, we don't want to go anywhere but Blako, then that kind of forms your decision. You've gotten the input that you're seeking from your constituents, and so therefore, representing those people, you move that recommendation forward. Don't know how that's going to turn out, but they want to go over the demographic report. They want to talk about the middle school strands for those programs, which at this point, my understanding is there is not going to be capacity to add another strand at Hopkins once they convert to a middle school. So there's all kinds of conversations going on. We're working to try to get it done. I don't know if their decision will be made in December. It's not likely because I don't think we'll have enough information from the surveys. Survey hasn't gone out yet, and the meeting is scheduled for December 14th. So it's a pretty tight window to have people review everything and get it back from the community. The principals of the schools, Azaveda, Blaco, Grimmer, Vallejo Mill, and Blaco, are doing a really good job in their school newsletters, informing all of the families of everything that is taking place at the task force, so that there's no surprises about the conversations that have been going on and possible recommendations or considerations. A lot of times people have the sense that they're not communicated with, and that's a pitfall we're trying to avoid. We're trying to get as much information out, and the principals are doing it as well on an ongoing basis. So stay tuned. We'll see what the demographic report says and see how that might inform a decision. I don't know. So, Kelly, do you have anything else? I can't think of anything else.
No, I think you covered everything pretty well. The only thing is, like you said, on the cost that normally would be incurred at Hopkins is just being transferred over to Lila. So it's a zero-sum game. So, like you said, all the costs for the utilities and all that stuff, it's the money that would be expended at Hopkins is now being expended at Bringhurst because all the utilities are off at Hopkins, and they're now, those costs are just shifted. So that was fine.
So thank you for the update, Sharon. I think a couple things come to mind, and obviously there's others questions as well, but I think how FAC can inform any decision being made, because that was part of the original intent behind having an FAC member on the task force, so that an FAC can provide input to the process. And it sounds like these principal updates would be valuable for FAC to get.
And the meetings are also, you can watch the meetings and hear all the conversation that happens. There's very strong opinions on all sides of this issue. And so the goal at the next meeting is going to be talking about the middle school strands and explaining and showing with the demographic report why another strand cannot be held at Hopkins, which is the task force for the MIP. That's their wish, but it doesn't look like that's a viable possibility. So
maybe you could remind them of the FAC rubric and the kind of things that we were talking about in that rubric around immersion being a priority for elementary school and middle school. Just
right.
There is work we've been doing to try and support this. I think
right. Yeah, there is. And like I said, many of these parents have been on here for years and years and years. And we're right back where we've always been every time, because there's a certain desire. They want unification at one site at the elementary level, and we can't do it for both programs. There is nowhere to do that. The numbers don't support it. And the board made very clear, and Trustee Sweeney made clear to the task force at the last meeting, that wherever the programs do unify, when and if that becomes a possibility, no homeschool students will be displaced at all. And that's a part of the misconception that's out there with families who are not in the program that attend these schools. that if it gets unified at a certain elementary school, that somehow their children are going to be displaced so that all of those kids can attend. And now where are they going to go? So there's a lot of misunderstanding, but the principals are trying to explain that's not going to happen. And Trustee Sweeney made it very clear at the last meeting to all the task force members that that's not going to happen. The board has never been willing to go down that path to remove homeschool kids from their elementary school in order to house a particular program. So depending upon how the demographic report comes out, we'll determine if Grimmer, if Blaco can house the SDI program fully, one site. So we have to wait and see.
So yeah, so good background. I think will be a future FAC agenda topic as well. Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I'm running a bit long. The demographic subcommittee, again, that currently it's me and Henry, and there is no activity. We just reviewed the work of the subcommittee, but there's no activity. But if after talking to working with the superintendent to get a conversation with the board, I would expect there to be more work there. So if there's other people who are interested in joining that subcommittee, let me know. It has to be approved by the full FAC, but do let me know and I'll make sure we schedule that for conversation. The last topic is thoughts on future meeting topics. So, for our future agendas. Actually, we should talk about meeting dates first, because that will impact how we talk about future meeting topics, now that I think about it. Because I just realized, I apologize for not realizing it sooner, but our next meeting would happen during spring break. January 5th, or not spring break, winter break. Winter break. Because that's the first Wednesday. So our decision would be whether we wanted to try and call a meeting on a different date in January. The other alternative would be to not meet on January and then just meet again on February 2nd. And I think, I think the biggest factor in this decision is there anything important the board is going to be looking at that we should advise them on, right? So like a SDI, MIP, if that really is going to the board in January.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to make it because of the surveys and the decisions that have to be made by or the recommendations by the task force, and then an agenda item put together for the board. If it did go, if we were lucky enough to get it to go, it would be the end of January, but that's not really likely. That's pushing it.
Yeah. I know there's some pressure though, because you have to make that decision soon if you want for next September's program.
Right, and enrollment.
Otherwise, you have to wait a whole nother year to implement something. So,
no, that, yeah.
I think that, yeah. Anyway, so I would suggest we schedule a meeting provisionally on Wednesday, January 19th, and I ask the committee to and as chair, I'll work with Kelly to determine whether that's necessary or not. And try to give everybody plenty of warning, because I know everybody's time is valuable. Michelle.
Hi, Brian. Looking at how our numbers have dwindled just here tonight, trying to put something together on the 19th in the middle and then turn around 2 weeks later and have another meeting again may be asking a little too much. I understand where you're coming from with the board and discussing it with them. I would think that if anything, if because they're going to be looking at where they're making their decisions, where their meetings are. If they absolutely need some information, they can get back to us and we have time to adjust. But otherwise, I think saying if where there's not an adjustment necessary, maybe we just go to the February unless the board asks us to convene in January.
Very politely put. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there consensus around Michelle's
Yes.
proposal?
Yes.
Or is there any objections to Michelle's proposal? Maybe the right way to ask it. So yes, our next meeting then will be the February 2nd. I will communicate with the committee if anything urgent comes up, but I actually don't think it will the more I think about it. So thank you. Thank you, Michelle and Sharon. Thoughts on future meeting topics? So the demographics report, the updated demographics report, the MIP SDI decision, I'm just going to list off the things I know about already that are potential future meeting topics. Brown Act overview, both a refresher for us and helpful for those new members. I have on my list an overview of education facilities funding available, which I think will be important education for us as we have all these options, right? Which money is available and how would we, that includes things like what money is coming from the state, what could come from the state, how do we raise money with bond issues, those sorts of things I think is could be a very valuable topic. Try to look at my notes. See if there's anything else. I'll take. I know there were other long range facilities plan and bathrooms updates were two other topics that have been brought up in the past as well. Both of those I don't see as imminent, but just recapping for everybody. Sharon.
Yes. Is Laura still in the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Laura, can you shed some light on, don't we have to vote to have our next meeting a remote virtual meeting? Is there some action that's required?
Brian, do you want to take it since we talked about it, or would you like me to cover it?
Go ahead, since you're the expert.
Okay. So that vote, it only covers you for 30 days. So if we voted today, within 30 days, that vote would expire. So instead of doing that for this meeting, since we knew that it would be over 30 days to our next meeting,
Right.
we're going to have to do a special session right before our next meeting.
Correct.
So
Okay.
if it's putting out in February rather than January, but we'll gavel in, do that, and then gavel back out for the regular meeting.
Thank you for explaining that to everyone. I wasn't quite sure I would articulate it correctly. Thank you.
Are there any other agenda topics people? Yes, Michelle.
Yes, Fran. When you talked about portable bathrooms, this is something, not as an SEIU person, but as someone at Irvington High School that has watched teachers running in from our basketball court area, which houses our portables. Students in the rain and everything else trying to get to the nearest bathroom, which is past the cafeteria. It's a sizable hike. But having gone to other schools with the same portable configuration and the amount of portables, they are able to get a portable men's, 2 bathrooms out there. Is there any chance, being that it doesn't look like we're going to be removing the portables away from Irvington anytime in the near future, of trying to see if we can't accommodate a bathroom closer so that there's more equity there for these kids and even the teachers, even if there's just a one stall out there, it'd be, a unisex one would be worthwhile.
Could I ask Kelly to take that question and get back to FAC on that? 'cause
Sure.
that's
Can you
not-
tell me what that question is again?
The question is, how do we go about getting a unisex or boy and girl and unisex bathroom, portable bathroom at Irvington High School to accommodate the 8 portables that we have out on the basketball courts that are the furthest away from any working bathroom?
I will get back to you and let you know. I wasn't aware that it was a problem, so I'll get back to you. Tom, can you put that on your list of things that we have to discuss and figure out?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. If there are no other suggestions for future meeting topics, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I know I've missed a couple of meetings. And so whether it's, if I can just maybe catch up with you, Brian, or if it's an actual agenda topic, I'd like to understand how the project planning works for the facility and how this committee is scoped to support that when it comes to the facilities project planning for the schools, and then how budgeting works for just the projects, how it works with how the schools are just between the schools, the committees, and the district as well. Just an overview. Would that be something that would be an agenda topic, or is that something I could just kind of get caught up to speed with someone separately?
Without a doubt, I would be happy to sit down and talk through that with you. If there's enough interest from everybody on the committee to bring it forward as an agenda topic, we can do that.
I would like to hear more about that too.
Well, then, so maybe we can find a time for the three of us, because that will still be under quorum, so it's okay for us to talk and not break, the Brown Act. Maybe we can find a time for us to catch up, and then my guess is what'll come out of that is something that should be shared with the whole committee, either in writing or as an agenda item, because both your fresh eyes, I think, will help us. So very happy to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think that takes us to I will now adjourn the meeting, and thank you. We'll try to keep us on time, but I'm not as great about it as our next chair, and welcome help on that front from anybody. There's our previous chair.
Thank
Well,
you.
since I won't see everybody, you guys have a wonderful holiday season and stay well and rested
And a happy new year.
Yes, happy new year.
Happy holidays.
In the new year. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.